Hello and welcome to our second part in the exploration of Sheila Birling's character. At the end of Act 1 she's very hysterical and although granted she's in a state of mental flux, she's emotionally unbalanced, it's fair to say that Sheila is no fool. In fact, she seems to be the only character aware of the inspector's true power. He knows, she says, almost screams at Gerald at the end of Act 1. She's aware that there's something unusual about the inspector, something a little off kilter. In Act 2, she stares at him wonderingly, dubiously. Now granted, the other Birlings and Gerald think he's odd in the sense that Inspector Gould is very curt and blunt with the Birling family. Perhaps a real policeman would have been a little bit more deferential. But Sheila knows there's more to it than that. And she utters a line in Act 3 which acknowledges his power. She says, "We hardly ever knew anything he didn't know." So, yes, she's emotionally distraught on the back end of the revelation that her behaviour contributed to the death of this girl. But Sheila has her wits about her. She's no fool. And she perceives, she has the kind of emotional intelligence to realise there's more to the inspector than a surly copper. We see the implosion of Gerald and Sheila's relationship in Act 2. We learn that Gerald had an affair with Eva/Daisy, and accusation and counter-accusation are bandied about by Sheila and Gerald as Inspector Gould cracks up the pressure. She calls him a fool. He accuses her of wanting to stay and gloat. So that fault line that we were aware of in Act 1, the half playful, half serious tone that Sheila adopted, that kind of fault line becomes a proper fracture in Act 2, and we see real rifts appearing in the relationship. But that said, Inspector reveals a real sense of fairness in his treatment of Sheila, because he insists that she stays so that she doesn't feel entirely responsible for Eva's death. The inspector is preoccupied with this family learning to, in his words, share our guilt. He doesn't want one person stumbling away into the sunset feeling 100% responsible. Oftentimes in Act 2, when Sheila is getting hysterical, I'm reminded of a character from those slasher films, a character that's known as Crazy Ralph. Now, you might not have seen a Friday the 13th slasher film, although I think they rebooted them a couple of years back. But there's always a character in these films called Crazy Ralph, and his job, his function, is to warn the himbos and bimbos setting up camp that they're dead meat if they stay. And they always dismiss him as a wackaloon, they always dismiss him as a loony. Now, similarly, no one takes Sheila seriously when she tries to warn them to be careful around the inspector. "You're beginning all wrong," she insists to her mum. "Stop before it's too late." But not unlike the himbos and bimbos dismissing Crazy Ralph, everyone thinks that Sheila is overexcited. "You're looking tired, dear," patronises Mrs. Birling. Crazy Ralph then, trying to warn people that danger is imminent if they stick around Camp Blood or Camp Scare, whatever it's called, because there's a strapping 6-footer with a hockey mask and a kebab knife going to open them up. Sheila Birling trying to make people aware that pain is imminent if her parents and her family don't treat the inspector very cautiously. I've said before, Sheila is smarter than the average bear. Smarter than the average Birling anyway. And she seems to be aware that one of the inspector's functions is to show the Birlings that they're no better than the poor people that they despise. Sheila realises that if, and here's the quote, "if you try to build up a wall between us and that girl, the inspector will knock it down." Mrs. Birling in particular is at pains to denigrate the working class at every turn. Girls of that class is the way she kind of asserts her toxic prejudices. But as we see here, the rich are no better than the poor. The rich are guilty of rape, the rich are guilty of sexual harassment, of stealing, of denying people charity when they're so close to starvation and suicide. So Birling is blissfully unaware, in a way that his daughter isn't, that nothing really separates rich from poor apart from a few quid in the bank. In terms of morals, there's really no difference. We're no better, we're no worse than those poorer than us. When you think about it, it's very ironic that Sheila learns to respect Gerald more because he's had an affair with Eva Smith. Yes, Gerald cheated on her, but he did show in his treatment towards Eva/Daisy genuine warmth and humanity that perhaps he didn't always show when he was swanking about town as a budding captain of industry. In material terms, cash in the bank, Gerald was always a good partner for Sheila. Affluent women in the Edwardian era, they didn't get jobs, so their career as such, the way that their success was measured in the public sphere, would have been by the affluence of their partner. But what Sheila is seeing in the way Gerald leapt to Eva's aid, felt genuine compassion for her, what Sheila is seeing there is that emotionally, in terms of kind of nobler sentiments, Gerald is a good match too. So it takes that infidelity for her to realise the man has a heart.